Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Diane Chambers. We're going to be discussing her amazing book, I Am Eternal, You Are Eternal, 6 Walks in Heaven. Available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out that Diane was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And of course, you already know I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. So listen to me. If you're a writer out there, you have a book that you've written, and now you find yourself at a crossroads because you need help moving the book you just wrote. Well, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice. Contact ARP. They're one of the best in the business to do it. And frankly, people, this is what they specialize in. So head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all of the ways that they're going to help maximize your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Diane here on the line. And at the end of the day, she's the expert. I mean, she's written the book. She's lived the experiences that are articulated. And she's going to be able to showcase everything much better than I ever could. So do me a favor. Sit back and make sure you're strapped in because you're about to embark upon a fantastic ride. Diane, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Listen, we are looking forward to this, okay? It's not every day that we get somebody on our network that has experienced things as vividly as you have, and we are looking forward to it. I got my notebooks ready. My listening audience does as well. Before we jump into the book, because I know we have a lot of information pertaining to that, I do think it's important that we start off by learning a little bit more about yourself. So please, tell us more about your background.
Hey, I'm 76 years old. I was born in Mississippi, grew up in the Air Force. I lived in Africa for 4 years while my dad was in the Air Force. I'm a retired science teacher and a Presbyterian elder. I taught for 35 years in the western suburbs of Chicago. And these days, I'm a watercolor artist in Durham, North Carolina. All the paintings that I sell, the full price goes to Durham Meals on Wheels.
Diane, we're going to have to invite you back on the network, okay? Not to discuss this book in further detail, not to discuss any other books you write in the future, just to discuss your background because, my goodness, it's wonderfully impressive, and I'm sure you have stories for days, and we would love to partake in them. I mean, this is incredible. Before we go any further and, jump into the book, I do want to make sure that I take this opportunity to commend you on your work in and out of the classroom. I've had a very brief stint in education myself, and I have a lot of educators in my inner circle through family and also close friends. And one thing that is certain, Diane, is educators never get the amount of credit that they deserve, and they damn sure don't get paid enough. I mean, listen, you may be hired to teach math, but at any given moment, and my educators understand this, at any given moment, you're going to have to be a referee. You're going to have to be a therapist. You might have to be a friend. I mean, there's so much that is required for educators, and a lot of that gets overlooked. But here through People of Distinction, we know firsthand the value that educators bring and really how important they are in shaping and molding the minds of future generations. So we know that the education doesn't stop just because you're out of the classroom. Diane, thank you very much for everything that you've done.
Oh, thank you. And it's a real joy. Occasionally I hear from a student that I taught 30 or 40 years ago. So that's a real joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Diane, without further ado, the anchor for today's interview is all about your fantastic book, I Am Eternal, You Are Eternal, 6 Walks in Heaven. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, my book starts with my near-death experience and my 6 walks with Jesus in heaven. I also tell about 2 other angel encounters in my book, and as you said, my book is spiritual and inspirational, while it is also unapologetically religious and political. Mm-hmm. I tell some of the things about my life so that readers will know that I'm just an ordinary person living a very difficult life, a job by Jesus to speak the truth. I see myself as a simple messenger. My book is filled with inspiration and gratitude and resilience, but also the truth. I talk in the book about young and old souls, and old souls are the ones that are closer to God. I also talk about our 2 purposes in life, and in my book I talk about both of those. In my book, I do tell about 2 angel encounters I had. One was in 1974, and the second one was in 1984, and that one announced the coming of my son, my only child, when I was almost 40. I've had rheumatoid arthritis since I was 8 years old, so for 69 years now. And what triggered the rheumatoid arthritis at such a young age is my father was a very abusive alcoholic. I also have pseudoexfoliation syndrome, which is a very rare genetic eye condition, and I've had 12 major eye surgeries, yet I'm still blessed to be able to see and to paint, even though I am visually impaired. So I just share things like this just so people will know that I'm a very ordinary person, and I just see myself as a messenger for God, really. What sort of sent me to be an author was that in 2020, Duke Cardiology and Mayo Clinic gave me 2 to 5 years to live because of another rare condition that I have, which is autonomic neuropathy. And although my heart is excellent, all the nerves in my body are being destroyed. So I knew that I was running out of time, and I needed to get Jesus' message out. Yeah. So I decided to write a book. Now, people who are fake Christians or who live by double standards won't believe what I've written. However, like science, my book is truth. And as a person who walks her talk, all the profits from my book go to a charity called digdeep.org. And in the United States, we have over 2.2 million homes that still do not have running water in them. And most of those homes are in the Navajo and the Appalachian areas. Mm-hmm. So this charity builds wells for those people and pumps water into their homes. So it's a great charity. Another thing about my book is that although I'm Christian, both of my editors that I picked are Jewish. And both of them said that they learned some things from my book. And there's some very simple truths in my book, such as Jesus had dark skin. I mean, it would seem to me by this time in history, knowing as much as we do about the past, that everybody would know this by now, but people choose to ignore that Jesus had dark skin. And he did, even when I walked with him in heaven. Also, something people might like to know is if you have a soul or several souls, I use the word soul for human or person, in this lifetime that you feel very connected to, they may be in your next lifetime, but they will probably be in a very different role. And for the people, this is what makes the book controversial and truthful, is people who vote against people programs and against environmental programs are the youngest souls and have the most to learn. It doesn't matter what your earthly education is. Your soul has the most to learn if you're not doing things that help people and help the environment. And I also talk in my book about people that are conservative. And they will be very uncomfortable because I talk about double standards, and they should be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So basically, one of the things that is all the way through my book is about how important truth is. Being afraid to speak the truth is what crucified Christ. And it's also what allowed Hitler and Trump to rise to power. Hitler and Trump are examples of powerful, destructive young souls. And if anybody voted for Trump, I don't care how many times you go to church, you are a fake Christian. Jesus would never vote for Trump. If there's something that you despise in another person, their circumstance, like they're gay or they're handicapped or they're from a different race or they're visually impaired or something, in your future lives, you will live that experience until you gain the compassion you need to move on. So be very careful what you despise. When I talk about young souls in my book, I refer to them as needing a lot of attention, being very interested in power, and being very interested in things. So when I look at people, look at them differently. I look at them as young or older souls. Older souls are people that are more interested in knowledge and charity. So it doesn't matter how many times you go to church. It depends on how much your soul has learned, whether or not you're moving closer to God.
Mm-hmm.
There is also karma in this world, and sometimes it doesn't look like it. I see a lot of things that happen in the world that are very bad and break my heart, but I know that there is karma. It may not happen in this lifetime, but it will happen in the next. And if the person that does the wrong or the bad or the evil deed does not make amends in this life, they will have to in the next life, and it will be harder for them to make amends. If there's, in my own situation, when I look at someone that's hurt me, and if I don't want them in my next life, then I work on forgiveness. And that's what other people should do too. If somebody is really not pleasant to you or makes your life hard, work on forgiving them so that you won't have them in your next life. I happen to live in a community that has people that are blessed with a lot of things. And I happen to live with my son. If you are not grateful and generous in this lifetime, in your next lifetime, you will have less than you do now. The cover of my book has a picture of a bee on a marigold, and I took that photograph in my own little yard. And it's to remind everybody that how important nature is to us. Without the bees, we wouldn't have any life on Earth. Mm-hmm. And many of us have lost sight of the fact that to harm nature is to harm ourselves. So I simply am a person who's liberal like Jesus, and I walk my talk every day, and I just was given this job to be a messenger, and that's what I'm trying to do.
You know, Diane, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, did I say too much?
No, not at all. Diane, you said just enough. Okay. Thank you very much for everything that you've articulated. And people, listen, I told you the perfect embodiment of a person of distinction, what she's talking about here. And we've covered a lot. And here's the best part. We've barely scratched the surface. I mean, there's so much left underneath. But what she has stated has spoken volumes. And this is something very, very special that you're going to need to get your hands on. Once again, Amazon and Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. I Am Eternal. You Are Eternal. 6 Walks in Heaven by P. Diane Chambers is the title you have to pick up. Head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble today and get lost in it. You can thank me later because this is something you need to add to your shelf. Powerful messages galore. I mean, this is something you could take to the bank. I'm loving it. Diane, listen, I'm like a child right now, right? Because there's a particular point that I want to go into, and I'm trying my hardest to wait and not go, but I'm like a kid that wants to have his dessert before dinner. Okay. I'm biting at the bit and I'm just trying to get there. You got to talk to us. I am fascinated by this notion, or by you stating that you have had 6 walks with Jesus in heaven. Whoa. I mean, people, listen, that again, that's not something we hear every day. Now, I know so many of you out there listening in, you're just like me. You've envisioned what heaven is like. You've envisioned the way it feels, the way it smells, the way it looks. And Diane, I got to go there next, okay? I got to ask about it. And you don't have to go into all 6 of them. Maybe each of them have been completely different. Maybe heaven is not one stationary place. Maybe it's a variety of locations. But I need to hear it from you. Talk to us about one of those walks. What did it look like? What did it feel like? Paint the picture for our listening audience here and for myself, please.
On my first walk to heaven, I was in an emergency room. I had been given an antibiotic, which I was allergic to, and I flatlined. So in my experience, I flatlined 7 times. And the first time I flatlined, I started leaving my body, and I knew that I was dying. I could see all the medical team working on me below as I left and walked the light. I did describe everything that I said, and all of my experiences are in medical records because I was interviewed heavily afterwards. I could remember so many details about what I saw, what I experienced, and also what the medical team was doing that people were just blown away. But on my first walk to heaven, the thing that I was most curious about, because I have a kind heart and a kind soul, is about evil. And so when I got to heaven and I walked this path of light, and I've tried to never read anybody else's description of a near-death experience because I didn't want it to change my memories or my experience. Yeah. But I walked the path of light, and Jesus was waiting for me, and I described how he looked, and as soon as I touched his hand, I knew that that was the moment of death because I could see what was happening to me below. And as I walked with him in heaven, and heaven was beautiful, it was a magnificent meadow of color and bright lights and all, I asked him the thing that I wanted most to know. The first thing was about evil, because I couldn't understand on this beautiful planet with so much diversity. God loves diversity. How we could have evil. And what I learned from Jesus is that God had given us the gift of free will. And with free will, some people choose not to use it well. Yeah. So that was my answer, and Jesus and I talked about that because I had such a hard time understanding how people would hurt each other and hurt this planet with their choices of free will. But that was the gift humans were given. That's just sort of the gist of my first walk in heaven.
I love it. And people, there's 5 others, okay? And that's just the walks in heaven, like she's stated in previous answers. This book embodies so much in terms of what you do in this lifetime will affect your next one. And I love that notion because it really makes you stop and think twice about how you carry on your day-to-day lives. People, I'm telling you, I know myself, okay? I can sit here And I could talk to Diane for hours. I am at the edge of my seat and just thoroughly engulfed in everything that she's saying. I'm hanging on to every single word, okay? But I have to keep reminding myself that, Benji, this is not about you, okay? So as we close out of here, Diane, we have discussed so much. You've already brought up so much. But as we close out, is there one particular thing that you would like to leave our listening audience with? Either something that we haven't yet discussed, or maybe something that we have that you really want to double down on and re-impress. What would you like to say?
Well, I guess my most important thing, and that's what I left heaven with, that you know that people are becoming older souls when their focus is no longer on accumulating power and accumulating possessions, and when they're focused more on honesty and charity, then their soul has moved closer to God. So that's probably my most important message, if I just had one thing to tell people.
Yeah. And what a great message it is, Diane, because what you're talking about there is, listen, really seeing the forest through the trees in the sense of focusing in, honing in on what actually is important. I think, speaking from my own experience, I think it's disheartening how many people chase material acquisition, right? They want the nicest car. They want the nicest house. They want the expensive jewelry or handbags. And listen, I live here in Southern California, so I am surrounded by it constantly. And it is something that I actually view as a benefit, because it helps me stay on track, and it really helps me focus in on my family, right? Family has always been something that has been truly the utmost importance to me. And my wife and I have recently welcomed our first child. We have our daughter now. And I can tell you, Diane, a lot of the things that you're talking about, it speaks volumes to me, and it really helps re-impress a lot of the notions that I value heavily. And, listen, following your logic, I may be an old soul, okay? Because I've never been one to chase financial acquisition and go after material assets. Now, I am human, right? And I am on my own journey.
I will tell you, in my own life, I walk my talk, as I say, all my furniture is from 1976. And
Wow.
People will make fun of me. One of my friends sent pictures of my living room furniture because her friend in England had the same pattern 30 years ago that I have on my furniture and my drapes today. And I consider my old furniture and drapes as sort of a badge of honor, because all the times I have replaced those goods, I have been able to donate that money to charity. And teachers are not the highest paid people in the world or in this country, but I have done very well. I have 47 charities that I support monthly, and I have for years and years and years.
Wow. That is absolutely
as I said,
beautiful.
I walk my talk.
Yeah. That is absolutely beautiful. Listen, I am one who firmly lives life by, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay, I can go through a whole list of things that I've had for decades plus that I refuse to exchange for newer things, because I'm like, listen, it still works just fine. Why would I do such a thing? Diane, you are a remarkable individual. People, you know where you got to go. Okay, I'm gonna say it for you again. It's Amazon. It's Barnes and Nobles. It's I Am Eternal, You Are Eternal, 6 Walks in Heaven, and you have P. Diane Chambers to thank for all of it. This is something that is much larger than a literary creation. Of course, at its basic format, that's what it is, right? It's a literary work of art. But I'm going to take it a step further. People, this is a movement. This is a lifestyle change. This is something that, as I mentioned before, everything that we've said, it's educational, it's informative, it is inspirational. Wonderful book to add to your shelf. An even better gift for you to get for someone else to add to theirs. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and just get lost in it. And imagine the world that we could have tomorrow if everybody did, and then everybody operated from this particular mentality. My goodness, we can have a true heaven here on earth. That is magical. Listen, Diane, this is something special. You are someone special, and it has been an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me. You are fantastic.